I'm Jessica Matthews, 32, and last spring I learned the hardest lesson in business isn't about strategy or finance, it's about trust. When I flew to Tokyo to secure a $4.2 million deal that would save my grandfather Robert's company, I never imagined my own mother would fabricate his medical emergency to steal everything we'd built. Trust is like glass, once shattered, you never see the pieces the same way again. Before I tell you how I discovered my own mother's betrayal, drop a comment sharing where you're watching from and subscribe if you've ever had to choose between family and career. Growing up, I spent countless afternoons in my grandfather Robert's office at Matthews Enterprises, watching him build our family legacy from the ground up. While other kids played at parks, I played with spreadsheets and sat quietly during business calls, absorbing everything. Grandpa Robert started with a small construction supply company in 1978 and transformed it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that specialized in high-end commercial building materials and innovative design solutions. By the time I was 10, I knew I wanted to follow in his footsteps. Business isn't just about making money, Jesse, he would tell me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. It's about building something that outlasts you, something that makes a difference. My mother Diana, on the other hand, never shared this passion. As Grandpa's only child, everyone expected her to take over the company, but she preferred spending money to making it. While I was completing my MBA at Northwestern, Diana was redecorating her fourth vacation home and charging it to the company expense account. The contrast between us couldn't have been more stark. I graduated top of my class and immediately joined Matthews Enterprises, working my way through every department before becoming Chief Operating Officer at 29. Diana, meanwhile, held the ceremonial title of Vice President but rarely showed up except for board meetings or company parties. Her contributions mainly consisted of criticizing my grandfather's outdated business approach and pushing for more aggressive profits, not to improve the company, but to fund her increasingly lavish lifestyle. "Your mother never understood that wealth comes from creating value," Grandpa confided in me once. "She sees money as something to take, not something to build." This fundamental difference in philosophy created a complicated family dynamic. Diana resented both my grandfather for not simply handing her control of the company and me for earning the position she felt entitled to by birth. Though she masked it with backhanded compliments and forced smiles at company functions, the tension was palpable whenever the three of us were in a room together. "Jessica certainly has your stubborn streak, Dad," she'd say with a tight smile. "Always working, never having fun. Don't you want a life outside this dusty office, sweetie?" What Diana never understood was that the company wasn't just work to me, it was passion, purpose, and family legacy all rolled into one. Every late night reviewing contracts, every weekend spent researching market trends, every difficult client negotiation was an investment in something I deeply believed in. By the time I turned 32, Matthews Enterprises employed over 200 people and had established a solid reputation in commercial construction materials across the Midwest. But the past year had brought serious challenges. A major client's bankruptcy left us with unpaid invoices totaling nearly $1 million. 2 consecutive quarters of losses had drained our reserves. And then the pandemic hit, bringing construction projects nationwide to a grinding halt. In February, our CFO Rachel presented the sobering numbers during a tense board meeting. "Without a significant capital injection or new major contract in the next quarter, we'll need to consider layoffs, selling off divisions, or exploring acquisition offers," she concluded, clicking off her presentation. My grandfather, now 78, sat at the head of the table looking older than I'd ever seen him. Though his mind remained sharp as ever, heart problems had forced him to reduce his active role in daily operations. "We've weathered worse," he said firmly. "This company wasn't built by giving up when things got tough." Diana, who had actually bothered to attend this meeting, immediately jumped in. "Perhaps it's time to consider selling while we still have value. Better to cash out now than risk losing everything." I shot her a look across the table. "Selling is premature. We have options." That's when I mentioned the potential partnership I'd been cultivating with Tanaka Industries, a Japanese firm looking to expand into the American market. They needed an established local partner with our expertise and distribution channels. We needed their innovative materials technology and the $4.2 million investment they were prepared to make. I've been in talks with their executive team for months, I explained. They're ready to move forward, but they want to meet in person to finalize the details. This could be exactly what we need. My grandfather nodded thoughtfully. When would this happen? Their team can meet in Tokyo in 3 weeks. I'd need to fly out and spend at least 4 days there to hammer out the agreement. Diana rolled her eyes. A business trip to Tokyo? How convenient. Meanwhile, we're supposed to just keep bleeding money? This isn't a vacation, I responded evenly. This is potentially the deal that saves Matthews Enterprises. After the meeting adjourned, my grandfather asked me to stay behind. Once everyone else left, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a leather folder. I've been preparing this for some time, he said, sliding it across to me. It's the paperwork granting you full negotiating authority on behalf of the company. Not just for this deal, but moving forward. I opened the folder, stunned to see comprehensive legal documents transferring primary executive authority from him to me. Grandpa, are you sure about this? I asked, recognizing the significance of what he was offering. He smiled sadly. My doctor is insisting I reduce stress, and frankly, I've been holding on too long already. You've been running this company in all but name for the past 2 years. It's time to make it official. Does Mom know about this? His expression hardened slightly. Diana will be informed at the appropriate time. For now, I need you focused on this Japanese deal without additional complications. I understood perfectly what he meant. If Diana knew power was formally shifting to me before this crucial deal, she would find ways to undermine it, consciously or unconsciously. As I left his office that day, I had no idea just how far she would go to prevent me from succeeding. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. I worked with our legal team to draft partnership agreements, consulted with cultural advisors about Japanese business etiquette, and prepared exhaustive presentations on our company's capabilities and growth potential. The night before my departure, as I was doing final preparations at the office, Diana unexpectedly appeared at my door. Working late again? She asked, leaning against the doorframe. Just making sure everything's perfect for tomorrow, I replied, surprised by her presence. She sauntered in and perched on the edge of my desk. You know, I've been thinking. Maybe I've been too hard on you. This Japan thing shows initiative. I looked up suspiciously. In 32 years, I couldn't remember my mother ever offering unprompted approval of anything I'd done. Thanks, I said cautiously. I mean it, she continued, reaching out to awkwardly pat my hand. Dad's always favored you, and I suppose I've been jealous. But you've earned this opportunity. Something about her sudden support felt off, but I was too preoccupied with final preparations to analyze it further. As she left, she paused at the door. Just make sure you keep your phone on in Tokyo, she said. With Dad's health, you never know when you might need to come home quickly. Looking back now, I should have recognized the warning in those words. But at the time, I simply nodded and returned to my work, unaware that Diana was already setting her plan in motion. The morning of my departure, I arrived at the office at 5:30, a full 3 hours before my flight. My suitcase waited by the door while I reviewed the presentation one final time, tweaking phrases and double-checking financial projections. This wasn't just any business trip, the future of Matthews Enterprises hinged on its success. Brian Kennedy, our chief financial officer and my longtime mentor, knocked on my door just after 6. Thought I'd find you here, he said, setting down a travel mug of coffee on my desk. Figured you could use this. I smiled gratefully. Am I that predictable? Only when the stakes are this high, he replied, taking a seat across from me. How are you feeling about the meeting? As ready as I'll ever be. I gestured to the stack of documents and flash drives I'd prepared. I've run through every possible scenario, anticipated every question they might ask. Brian nodded approvingly. I've watched you prepare for this deal for months. Nobody could be more ready. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I've also been doing this long enough to know when something else is bothering someone. I sighed and leaned back in my chair. Brian had been with the company since I was in college and had become something of a second father figure to me. It's my mother, I admitted. She came by last night to wish me luck. And that's unusual? Very. She's never supported my role in the company. Always undermined me, made snide comments about how I got where I am because of Grandpa's favoritism. I shook my head. Suddenly she's my cheerleader? It feels wrong. Brian frowned. Your instincts are usually good. Any idea what might be behind the change of heart? None. Unless. I hesitated. Grandpa gave me full negotiating authority for this deal. He's also preparing to officially make me CEO. He hasn't told her yet. Could she have found out somehow? I considered this. Maybe. His assistant Angela has always had a soft spot for Mom. Just be careful, Brian advised. Diana might be genuinely trying to improve your relationship, but 32 years of evidence suggests otherwise, I finished for him. Before I left, Brian handed me a sealed envelope. From your grandfather. He asked me to give it to you before you departed. Inside was a handwritten note and a small wooden charm in the shape of a maple leaf, a memento from the first construction site where Grandpa had broken ground on his own. The note read, Jessica, this charm has been my good luck token through every major deal since 1978. Now it's yours. I trust you completely. Remember, patience in negotiation, firmness in values. You were born for this moment. Love, Grandpa. My eyes misted as I tucked both the note and charm into my jacket pocket. With renewed determination, I gathered my materials and headed for the airport. The 12-hour flight to Tokyo gave me ample time to review my materials and strategy. I'd researched Japanese business culture extensively, understanding the importance of respect, patience, and relationship building. Tanaka Industries was a family-owned business like ours, but significantly larger, with divisions spanning several countries. Their CEO, Hiroshi Tanaka, was reportedly as traditional in his business approach as my grandfather. According to my research, the key decision-makers would be Tanaka himself, his daughter Yumi, who served as their chief innovation officer, and Kenji Yamamoto, their international expansion director. Winning over all three would be crucial. I spent the flight meticulously reviewing their company history, recent innovations, and the specific areas where our businesses complemented each other. By the time we landed in Tokyo, I had internalized every detail of my presentation and was ready to address any potential concerns they might raise. My colleague Stephanie Chen, our lead counsel, met me at the hotel. We had arranged to arrive a day early to acclimate and make final preparations. The meeting room is confirmed for 9 tomorrow morning, she informed me as we reviewed our schedule. Their full executive team will be present, including Mr. Tanaka himself. That's good news, I noted. His presence signals they're taking this seriously. Very seriously, Stephanie agreed. My contact says they've cleared their schedules for 2 full days of discussions. We spent the evening finalizing our approach, role-playing potential scenarios, and ensuring all our documentation was flawless. After a quick dinner, I tried to get some sleep, though anticipation made it difficult. Everything we'd worked for came down to the next 48 hours. The next morning, I dressed in a conservative dark suit and arrived at Tanaka Industries headquarters 30 minutes early. The building was a stunning blend of traditional Japanese architecture and modern design, much like the company itself, which balanced innovation with respect for tradition. As Stephanie and I waited in the reception area, I received a text from my grandfather, "You've got this, Jessie. Remember who you are and what you represent." I smiled and was about to respond when we were escorted to the meeting room. The space was minimalist and elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Tokyo's skyline. Around a large table sat 7 executives, all in dark suits, with Hiroshi Tanaka at the head. After exchanging business cards with proper protocol and the customary pleasantries, we began our presentation. I outlined Matthews Enterprises' history, our current market position, and our vision for future growth, emphasizing how perfectly our companies aligned for mutual benefit. Matthews Enterprises brings 6 decades of established relationships throughout the American construction industry, I explained. What we lack is the cutting-edge material technology that Tanaka Industries has pioneered. Together, we can revolutionize the market. I was just moving to the financial projections when my phone began vibrating insistently in my pocket. Following proper etiquette, I had silenced it for the meeting, but whoever was calling had tried 3 times in quick succession. Apologizing briefly, I glanced at the screen and saw multiple missed calls from my mother. As I moved to silence it completely, a text message appeared. Emergency. Dad had massive stroke. Hospital. Come home now. Need you to sign medical directives. Life or death. My blood ran cold. In that moment, everything else disappeared, the deal, the meeting, Tokyo itself. All I could think of was my grandfather lying in a hospital bed, possibly dying, while I was on the other side of the world. I looked up to see the Tanaka executives watching me expectantly, waiting for me to continue. Somehow, I had to navigate both the most important business meeting of my career and what appeared to be a life-or-death family emergency simultaneously. Little did I know that only one of these crises was real, and it wasn't the one I feared most. Ms. Matthews? Is everything all right? Mr. Tanaka's concerned voice broke through my momentary shock. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my professional composure while my mind raced with worry. I apologize for the interruption, I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. I've just received an urgent message regarding a family emergency. May I request a brief recess? Mr. Tanaka immediately nodded, his expression softening. Of course. Family matters take precedence. Please, take whatever time you need. With a grateful bow, I excused myself and hurried to a private corner of the hallway, Stephanie following close behind. My hands trembled as I called my mother back. Diana answered on the first ring. Jessica. Thank God. You need to come home immediately. Her voice sounded strained, bordering on hysterical. Mom, what happened? Is Grandpa okay? I gripped the phone tighter. He collapsed during breakfast. The doctors are saying it's a massive stroke. Her voice broke. He's unresponsive, Jess. They're doing tests, but it doesn't look good. My stomach dropped. Which hospital? Have you spoken to his doctors directly? County General. And yes, I've been with him since the ambulance brought him in. But there's another problem. Diana's voice lowered. The medical team needs someone with power of attorney to make decisions. You know Dad named you in his healthcare directive. This was true. After his heart problems began, Grandpa had updated his medical directives, naming me as his healthcare proxy. What decisions? What are they asking for? I pressed, trying to think clearly through the panic. They're talking about surgical options, experimental treatments. I don't understand all the medical jargon, but they need authorization immediately. They need your signature, Jessica. They won't accept mine. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. The timing couldn't have been worse, but there was no question about what mattered more. I'll book the next flight home, I said. No. Diana's response came too quickly, too forcefully. There's no time for that. They need decisions now, within hours. The hospital administrator said you can email signed authorization. I've already had them send the forms to your email. Something about this felt off. County General had always been very strict about in-person verification for medical authorizations, something I knew from when Grandpa had his heart surgery 2 years ago. Let me talk to the doctor directly, I said. He's in with your grandfather now. Just check your email and sign those forms, Jessica. Every minute counts. The edge in her voice sharpened. Unless you care more about your business deal than your own grandfather's life? The accusation stung, but also raised my suspicions further. This manipulative tactic was classic Diana. Stephanie, who had been standing nearby, touched my arm gently. "What's happening?" I covered the phone and quickly explained the situation. "Something seems strange," she whispered. "Hospitals don't typically operate this way, even in emergencies." I nodded, having had the same thought. Uncovering the phone, I said, "Mom, I'm going to call the hospital directly while I check my email." "What's the doctor's name?" A pause. "Dr. Winters." "But Jessica, you're wasting precious time. Dad could die while you're playing detective." "I'll call you right back," I said, ending the call. Immediately, I searched for County General's number and called their main line. "County General Hospital, how may I direct your call?" answered a polite receptionist. "This is Jessica Matthews. I'm calling about my grandfather, Robert Matthews. I was told he was admitted for a stroke this morning." "One moment please while I check our system." After a brief pause, "I'm sorry, but we don't have any patient by that name admitted today." My heart skipped a beat. Could he be registered under a different name? Or perhaps taken to emergency under a John Doe? Let me check emergency admissions. Another pause. "No stroke patients matching your grandfather's age were admitted this morning. Would you like me to check other departments?" "Yes, please check everywhere," I insisted, a mixture of relief and confusion washing over me. After a thorough search, the receptionist confirmed, Robert Matthews was not a patient at County General, nor had any stroke patients matching his description been admitted that day. "Is there a Dr. Winters on staff there?" I asked as a final check. "No, I'm sorry. We don't have a physician by that name." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. If Grandpa wasn't in the hospital, what was my mother playing at? "He's not there," I told Stephanie, whose eyes widened. "Either she has the wrong hospital, or there is no emergency," Stephanie finished for me. I tried calling my grandfather's cell phone but got no answer. This wasn't unusual, he often forgot to charge it or left it in another room. Next, I called his home landline with the same result. On a hunch, I called Michael Donnelly, his next-door neighbor and longtime friend. "Michael, it's Jessica Matthews. Sorry to bother you, but have you seen my grandfather today?" "Saw him about 20 minutes ago, actually," Michael replied cheerfully. "He was in his garden, tending to those rosebushes of his." Seemed right as rain. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by anger as the pieces fell into place. There was no emergency. My mother had fabricated the entire scenario, but why? I checked my email and found the supposed hospital forms. They were indeed medical authorization documents, but examining them closely revealed they weren't just health directives. Hidden among the medical jargon were clauses granting broader powers. Essentially a disguised power of attorney that would give the holder control over all of Grandpa's affairs, including company decisions. If I had hastily signed these in a panic, believing my grandfather was dying, I would have unwittingly transferred control of everything to Diana. "She's trying to get control of the company," I said to Stephanie, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "While you're out of the country," Stephanie added, her legal mind quickly connecting the dots. "And with these documents, she could potentially authorize financial transactions, transfer funds." A cold realization washed over me. The deal. She's making her move now because she knows about the $4.2 million from Tanaka Industries. I immediately called Brian back at headquarters. "Brian, has my mother been to the office today?" His surprised tone told me everything. "Yes, she came in about an hour ago. Said she needed some files from your grandfather's office for a family matter." Angela let her in. "Is everything okay?" "No. Listen carefully. Mom is attempting something illegal." "Has she contacted anyone in finance? Requested any transfers or access to accounts?" A pause. "She was asking Rachel about wire transfer protocols for the incoming Japanese investment." Said you'd asked her to handle some details while you were away. My stomach dropped. Brian, I need you to lock down all company accounts immediately. Call legal and have them prepare for potential fraud prevention. And most importantly, try to reach my grandfather. He's not in the hospital, Mom made that up. He should be at home. I could hear the shock in Brian's voice. Jesus, Jessica. What is she trying to do? Steal the company, I said grimly. And she almost got away with it. As I hung up, I realized I now faced an even more complex challenge than before. I had a crucial business negotiation to salvage and a company to protect from an internal threat. All while maintaining a professional facade in front of our potential Japanese partners. Stephanie squeezed my arm supportively. What do you need me to do? I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. First, we go back in there and continue our presentation as if nothing is wrong. Then, during the lunch break, we mobilize everyone back home to contain this situation. Are you sure you can focus on the negotiation with all this happening? She asked worriedly. I straightened my jacket and squared my shoulders. I've never been more sure of anything. My grandfather built this company through integrity and perseverance. I won't let anyone destroy that legacy, especially not my own mother. As we walked back toward the conference room, my phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Where are the signed forms? Dad's condition is worsening. Don't make me tell him his granddaughter abandoned him when he needed her most. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without responding. The time for falling for manipulation was over. Now, I needed to outmaneuver the very person who had taught me about deception my entire life. The conference room fell silent as Stephanie and I re-entered. 7 pairs of eyes watched us expectantly, a mixture of concern and curiosity on their faces. I bowed slightly in apology. Thank you for your patience, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I apologize for the interruption. There was a family matter that required immediate attention, but it has been addressed for now. Mr. Tanaka nodded graciously. Family obligations are understood and respected. Please, continue when you are ready. I resumed the presentation with renewed focus, advancing through the financial projections and partnership structure as if my world wasn't crumbling behind the scenes. Meanwhile, my phone continued to vibrate with messages from Diana, which I systematically ignored. While I spoke about market penetration strategies, my mind worked on a parallel track, piecing together what must have happened. Diana had somehow learned about the impending leadership transition and the Japanese investment. Perhaps she had bribed Angela for information or installed spyware on company devices. Whatever her methods, she had crafted an elaborate scheme to seize control precisely when I would be halfway around the world and distracted by the most important deal of my career. During a brief video demonstration of our latest products, I discreetly texted Brian, "Any update on Grandpa?" His response came quickly, "Found him at home. Completely fine." Shocked about Diana's claims. "He's heading to the office now." Relief washed over me, followed immediately by a surge of anger. My own mother had lied about her father having a life-threatening stroke, all for money. The depth of betrayal was staggering. As the morning session wound down and Mr. Tanaka suggested breaking for lunch, I received another text from Brian that made my blood run cold. Diana attempted wire transfer of $780,000 to offshore account. Rachel flagged it. Also found evidence she's been skimming company funds for months. Lawyer says we have enough for criminal charges. I excused myself once more and stepped into the hallway to call him directly. Tell me everything, I demanded once he answered. It's worse than we thought, Jess, Brian said gravely. Diana didn't act alone. Thomas from sales has been helping her. They've been falsifying invoices and diverting payments for at least 8 months. Thomas Reynolds was our VP of sales, and, not coincidentally, someone Diana had personally recommended for the position 2 years ago. The betrayal had tentacles I hadn't even considered. How much are we talking about? Initial estimate is around 1.2 million. And that's just what we found so far. I leaned against the wall, stunned. And the transfer she attempted today? She told Rachel you had authorized an advance payment to a consultant for the Japanese deal. When Rachel asked for documentation, Diana said it was confidential and that you'd explain everything when you returned. Rachel stalled her by saying the system needed additional verification for international transfers. Thank God for Rachel, I murmured. What's Grandpa doing now? He's called an emergency board meeting for 5 p.m. our time. Diana doesn't know yet, we're trying to keep her in the building until then. Your grandfather. Jessica, I've never seen him like this. He's devastated but also furious. I closed my eyes briefly, imagining how betrayed he must feel. Brian, I need you to do something else for me. Contact our IT department and have them check Diana's emails and computer. I suspect she may have been communicating with someone at Tanaka Industries as well. You think she was trying to sabotage the deal too? It would explain why she chose this exact moment to make her move. If the deal falls through and she controls the company, she could sell it off in pieces without any resistance. After hanging up, I took a moment to collect myself. The magnitude of what was happening threatened to overwhelm me, but I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now, not here. Stephanie approached with concern etched on her face. Are you okay? No, I admitted honestly. But I will be. We need to handle 2 crises simultaneously now. I quickly brought her up to speed on the latest developments. As our company's legal counsel, she immediately grasped the severity of the situation. We need to preserve evidence, she said, her lawyer instincts kicking in. And depending on the amount involved, this could be a federal case. Let's focus on one crisis at a time, I said. Right now, we need to secure this partnership. Without it, there might not be a company left to save. As we prepared to return to the meeting, my phone rang again, this time with a video call from my grandfather. I answered immediately, stepping into an empty office for privacy. His familiar face appeared on screen, looking tired but very much alive. Jessica, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I just heard what's happening. I'm so sorry. Grandpa, I said, relief washing over me at seeing him well. Are you okay? I'm fine, not at death's door as your mother claimed. His expression darkened. I never thought, even after everything, I never believed she would go this far. Neither did I admitted. But we'll handle it. The company is secure for now. He nodded, then looked at me with concern. What about the deal? Should you come home? I straightened my shoulders. No. If I leave now, we lose Tanaka Industries and everything we've worked for. Mom's plan would succeed in a different way. Pride flickered across his face. You always were the strongest of us. Do what you need to do in Tokyo. I'll handle things here. Be careful, I warned. Diana is desperate now, and desperate people are unpredictable. After saying goodbye, I rejoined the Japanese executives for lunch, maintaining a facade of calm while my world imploded back home. Throughout the afternoon session, I received periodic updates from Brian about the unfolding situation. Diana tried to access the main investment account. Denied. IT found emails between Diana and Thomas discussing contingency plans if you succeeded in Tokyo. Security has been instructed not to let Diana leave the building before the board meeting. With each message, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about saving the company anymore, it was about justice and protecting everything my grandfather had built. As the day's negotiations concluded, Mr. Tanaka expressed cautious optimism about our partnership. We are impressed with Matthews Enterprises' vision and your presentation, Ms. Matthews. There are details to address tomorrow, but I believe we have the foundation for a mutually beneficial relationship. I bowed respectfully. Thank you for your consideration. My team and I look forward to continuing our discussions. Back at the hotel, Stephanie and I set up an impromptu command center in my suite. With the time difference, the board meeting would happen at 7 a.m. Tokyo time. We arranged for a video conference link so I could participate remotely. Should we tell the Tanaka team about what's happening? Stephanie asked as we prepared our strategy for the next day's negotiations. I considered this carefully. Not yet. Japanese business culture places enormous value on stability and trustworthiness. If they think we're in the middle of an internal crisis, they might pull out regardless of how well our companies align. But if they find out later we weren't forthcoming, by then, we'll have contained the situation, I said with more confidence than I felt. For now, we focus on securing the partnership while our team at home handles Diana. At precisely 7 a.m. Tokyo time, I connected to the emergency board meeting. The screen showed our conference room back in Chicago, with all 7 board members present, including Diana, who sat stiffly at one end of the table, her face a mask of indignation. My grandfather opened the meeting with uncharacteristic formality. This emergency session is called to address serious allegations of financial misconduct and attempted fraud. Diana immediately protested. This is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. Jessica is making wild accusations because she's afraid I'll challenge her authority. The evidence suggests otherwise, my grandfather replied coldly, nodding to Rachel, who distributed folders to each board member. For the next 30 minutes, Rachel methodically outlined the evidence against Diana and Thomas: falsified invoices, unauthorized transfers, manipulated expense reports, and finally, the fraudulent medical authorization documents that would have granted Diana control of both my grandfather's medical decisions and his financial affairs. As the presentation concluded, the board members stared at Diana with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Even her usual allies seemed stunned by the scope of her betrayal. Do you have anything to say in your defense? My grandfather asked her. Diana's composure finally cracked. Defense? I shouldn't need a defense. This company belongs to me by right. I'm your daughter. Her voice rose hysterically. You built this company for your family, but you've always treated Jessica like she's more your family than I am. I built this company for someone who would care for it, my grandfather responded quietly. Someone who understood its value beyond dollar signs. You've never shown that understanding. Because you never gave me the chance. Diana shouted. You handed everything to her on a silver platter while keeping me at arm's length. From my screen in Tokyo, I finally spoke. That's not true, Mom, and you know it. Grandpa offered you the same opportunities he gave me. You chose not to take them. You chose shopping trips over learning the business. You chose vacations over building relationships with clients. Diana's gaze burned through the screen at me. Easy for you to judge from your perfect perch. You've never had to fight for anything. Including your respect, apparently, I said softly. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough for you. For a moment, something like regret flickered across her face, quickly replaced by hardened resolve. So what happens now? You parade me out in handcuffs? Destroy what's left of the Matthews family name? My grandfather sighed heavily. That depends on you, Diana. The board has authorized me to offer you one option to avoid criminal charges. He slid a document across the table to her. Full resignation from the company. Surrender of all shares to be held in trust. Repayment of all misappropriated funds. And a legally binding agreement never to contest any future company decisions. Diana laughed bitterly. You're disowning me. Your own daughter. I'm protecting what remains of this family and this company, he corrected her. The alternative is that we press charges for fraud and embezzlement. Given the amount involved, you would likely face prison time. The room fell silent as Diana stared at the document before her. I watched her through the screen, trying to reconcile this desperate, angry woman with the mother I'd known all my life. Had she always been capable of this level of betrayal, or had something broken inside her along the way? Finally, she picked up a pen. You'll regret this, she said, signing with a vicious flourish. Both of you. As she stormed out of the room, the weight of what had just happened settled over everyone. My grandfather looked suddenly older, the lines in his face deeper than before. Jessica, he said, turning to the screen. I'm sorry you had to witness this from so far away. I'm where I need to be, I assured him. Both for the company and for myself. As the meeting concluded and the board members filed out, Brian stayed behind to speak with me privately. "IT found something else," he said once we were alone. "Emails between Diana and someone at Osaka Trading Group, one of Tanaka's competitors. She was offering to tank the deal with Tanaka and sell them proprietary information instead." The final piece clicked into place. Diana hadn't just wanted to steal the company, she'd actively worked to sabotage our future as well. "Does Grandpa know?" I asked. Brian shook his head. "Not yet. I thought you should decide how to handle it." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. "Forward me everything, but don't tell Grandpa yet. He's been through enough today. I'll deal with this angle from here." As I ended the call, I realized the full scope of what I needed to accomplish the next day, not only secure the partnership with Tanaka Industries but also uncover whether anyone on their team had been compromised by Diana's machinations. The betrayal had cut deeper than I ever imagined possible, but it had also clarified something important: sometimes the greatest threats come from within, disguised as the people who should care for you most. Morning arrived after a nearly sleepless night. Despite exhaustion, I felt strangely calm, the kind of clarity that comes when every option except forward has been eliminated. As I dressed for the second day of negotiations, I reviewed the emails Brian had forwarded. Diana had indeed approached Kentaro Saito, an executive at Osaka Trading Group, offering to sabotage our deal with Tanaka in exchange for a personal payout and a guaranteed position if Osaka subsequently acquired Matthews Enterprises at a distressed price. What she hadn't known was that Saito had apparently informed Yumi Tanaka of the approach as a professional courtesy, Japanese business culture often valuing long-term relationships over short-term gains. This explained the occasional guarded looks I'd received from Yumi during yesterday's meetings. She suspected something was amiss but hadn't decided whether Matthews Enterprises as a whole was untrustworthy or if this was an isolated incident. I needed to address this directly but delicately. If handled poorly, it could destroy the deal and our company's reputation. If handled well, it could actually strengthen our position. Stephanie met me for breakfast in the hotel restaurant, dark circles under her eyes matching my own. "Any updates from home?" she asked. Diana signed the agreement and left. Security escorted her from the building. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. Thomas has been fired and the board is reviewing whether to press charges against him separately. "And your grandfather?" I shook my head sadly. "Brian says he's putting on a brave face, but this has hit him hard. Betrayal by your own child." I trailed off, unable to imagine the pain he must be feeling. Stephanie nodded sympathetically. "What's our strategy for today?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "I discovered something last night. Diana approached Osaka Trading Group, Tanaka's competitor, trying to sabotage our deal. And apparently, Yumi Tanaka knows about it." Stephanie's eyes widened. "That complicates things. Actually, it might give us an opening. The Japanese value honesty and directness when it comes to acknowledging problems. If we address this head-on, demonstrate that Diana's actions were those of a rogue individual who has been removed from the company. It could show that Matthews Enterprises handles internal issues decisively," Stephanie finished, nodding slowly. "Risky, but potentially effective." "Exactly. I need a private conversation with Yumi before the main meeting." Through a carefully worded message to Yumi's assistant, I managed to arrange a brief meeting 30 minutes before the scheduled negotiations. We met in a small tea room adjacent to the main conference area. Yumi Tanaka was a formidable woman in her early 40s, with an impeccable educational background and a reputation for both innovation and traditional values. A rare combination that had propelled Tanaka Industries into international markets while maintaining their core identity. After exchanging pleasantries, I took a calculated risk. "Ms. Tanaka, before we rejoin the larger discussion, I believe there's a matter of potential concern that should be addressed directly between us." Her expression remained neutral, but I noticed a slight shift in her posture, more alert, more guarded. I've recently discovered that my mother, Diana Matthews, improperly approached Mr. Saito at Osaka Trading with unethical proposals. I maintained steady eye contact. This action was taken without the knowledge or approval of Matthews Enterprises, and upon discovery, immediate action has been taken. As of yesterday, Diana Matthews no longer has any position or authority within our company. Yumi's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise in her otherwise composed demeanor. You are very direct, Ms. Matthews. This is unexpected. In my experience, Ms. Tanaka, hiding problems only makes them fester. I believe in addressing challenges openly and resolving them decisively. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Mr. Saito informed me of the approach as a courtesy. I was uncertain whether this reflected your company's tactics or was an isolated incident. It was absolutely the latter, I assured her. Matthews Enterprises was built on principles of integrity and trust, values I personally hold sacred. My grandfather founded this company with the belief that honest business is the only sustainable business. Yumi studied me for a long moment before nodding. My father says character reveals itself most clearly in crisis. Your handling of this situation speaks well of yours. Relief washed through me, though I maintained my professional composure. Thank you for your understanding. I wanted to ensure this issue wouldn't cast a shadow over our discussions today. On the contrary, Yumi replied, it has provided valuable insight into Matthews Enterprises' leadership. She rose gracefully. Shall we join the others? As we walked to the main conference room, I felt cautiously optimistic. The first potential catastrophe had been averted, perhaps even turned to our advantage. Now I needed to navigate the actual negotiations while simultaneously coordinating with our team back home to secure the company's future. The day's discussions were intense and detailed. While presenting our manufacturing capabilities and distribution networks, I was simultaneously texting with our legal team about Diana's separation agreement. While negotiating royalty percentages, I was receiving updates about securing our financial systems against further intrusion. During a brief recess, I stepped out to take a video call from our IT director, who had discovered backdoor access to our systems that Diana and Thomas had established. While he worked to close these security breaches, I remained outwardly focused on the partnership discussions, never letting my divided attention show. Mr. Tanaka, who had been mostly observant during the first day, took a more active role in today's negotiations. His questions were incisive, his concerns thoughtful. I found myself respecting his measured approach and commitment to understanding every aspect of the potential partnership. Your materials technology would integrate well with our existing product lines, he noted at one point. But I'm concerned about intellectual property protections across international markets. This was exactly the kind of complex issue I had prepared for extensively. I outlined our proposed IP sharing agreement, which protected both companies' innovations while allowing for collaborative development. We've structured this as a true partnership, I explained. Neither company should feel vulnerable about sharing proprietary technology because the agreement creates mutual benefit and mutual protection. Mr. Tanaka nodded approvingly. You've anticipated our concerns well. By mid-afternoon, we had reached agreement on most major points. As we reviewed the draft partnership documents, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Brian, Diana attempting to contact Tanaka directly. Using former assistant's email credentials. My heart raced, but I maintained my outward calm. I excused myself for a moment and stepped into the hallway. What exactly is she trying to send them? I asked Brian over the phone. Looks like allegations that the company is in worse financial shape than we've disclosed. She's claiming you're hiding significant losses and pending lawsuits. I closed my eyes briefly, gathering my thoughts. Is any of it true? Of course not. But it's crafted to sound plausible enough to create doubt. Has the email gone through? No, our security team intercepted it. But she'll likely try other channels. I made a quick decision. Forward me the exact text she was trying to send. I'll address it directly before it becomes an issue. When I returned to the conference room, I requested a brief moment to address something important. Mr. Tanaka, Ms. Tanaka, honored members of your team, in the interest of complete transparency, I need to make you aware of a situation. The former executive I mentioned to Ms. Tanaka this morning is currently attempting to contact you with false information about our company's financial status. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the room. Rather than having you receive this misinformation and wonder about its validity, I'd prefer to address it directly. I pulled up the financial statements we had already provided. These certified statements reflect our company's true position. We have also disclosed all material litigation and contingent liabilities in the due diligence documents. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. What you won't find in those documents is the personal vendetta being waged by someone who was removed for unethical behavior. I believe in addressing problems directly rather than hoping they'll disappear. Mr. Tanaka studied me thoughtfully before speaking. Your candor is appreciated, Ms. Matthews. In my experience, those with nothing to hide rarely feel the need to hide anything. The tension in the room dissipated, and we returned to finalizing the agreement. By 5 o'clock, we had reached consensus on all major points. The partnership would proceed, with Tanaka Industries making a $4.2 million investment in exchange for exclusive distribution rights to our products in Asian markets and shared development of new technologies. As we concluded the meeting, Mr. Tanaka extended his hand to me. A Western gesture that signified his respect. Matthews Enterprises has found a worthy successor in you, he said. Your grandfather should be proud. Thank you, I replied, deeply moved by his words. This partnership represents everything he built our company to become. Later that evening, as Stephanie and I celebrated our success with a quiet dinner, I received a video call from my grandfather. His face appeared on screen, looking tired but relieved. You did it, he said simply. The board just approved the final agreement. We did it, I corrected him. This was your vision all along. He shook his head. No, Jessica. This was your achievement. I laid the foundation, but you're building something greater than I ever imagined. How are you doing? I asked, concern evident in my voice. His expression sobered. It's been a difficult day. Diana came to the house after leaving the office. My heart sank. What happened? She wanted to explain herself, justify what she'd done. Said I'd forced her into it by always favoring you. He sighed heavily. Perhaps I did fail her as a father in some ways. Grandpa, no. She made her choices. We all make choices, he said quietly. And we all live with their consequences. Diana will live with hers, as I will live with mine. The weight of everything that had happened hung between us, unspoken but palpable. When are you coming home? He asked, changing the subject. Tomorrow night. There's a small signing ceremony in the morning, then we're on the afternoon flight. He nodded. Good. The company needs its CEO present. CEO? I repeated, surprised. The board voted unanimously today. It's official now. Matthews Enterprises is yours to lead, Jessica. Tears welled in my eyes. Despite everything that had happened, despite the painful way it had come about, this moment represented the culmination of everything I'd worked for. I won't let you down, I promised. I know, he said simply. You never have. As we said goodbye, I realized that through crisis and betrayal, something new had emerged, a stronger company, a clearer vision, and a leadership tested by fire. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I could see it clearly. The 13-hour flight from Tokyo to Chicago gave me ample time to prepare for what awaited me at home. While Stephanie slept in the seat beside me, I reviewed everything that had happened over the past 72 hours, still struggling to fully process the magnitude of Diana's betrayal. My phone contained dozens of congratulatory messages about the Tanaka partnership and my appointment as CEO, but also concerned notes from friends and colleagues about the situation with my mother. News travels fast in business circles, and though we'd tried to manage the narrative, rumors were already circulating. As we began our descent into O'Hare, I stared out the window at the Chicago skyline emerging through scattered clouds. This city had been home to Matthews Enterprises for 3 generations. Now its future rested in my hands, a responsibility I felt in every fiber of my being. Brian was waiting when we emerged from customs, his familiar face a welcome sight after the intensity of the past few days. "Welcome home, CEO," he said with a tired smile, giving me a brief hug before taking my carry-on. "How's everything at the office?" I asked as we walked toward the parking garage. "Stabilizing. We've completed the security audit and closed all the backdoor access points. Thomas is cooperating fully, hoping for leniency. Says Diana manipulated him into helping her." I raised an eyebrow skeptically. "And you believe that?" Brian shrugged. "I believe he's desperate to save his own skin. But his information has been useful in tracing exactly what happened." "And Diana?" I asked, the question I'd been dreading. His expression darkened. "She's not going quietly, Jessica. After signing the agreement, she tried to access the executive floor the next morning and had to be escorted out by security. Then she started calling board members individually, trying to convince them you orchestrated this whole thing to push her out." I sighed heavily. "Of course she did. No one's buying it," he assured me. "But she scheduled a meeting with Gerald Foster." This news made me pause. Gerald Foster was a longtime friend of my grandfather's and the most senior board member besides Robert himself. Though he'd supported my appointment as CEO, he was also known for his traditional values regarding family businesses. "When?" "Tomorrow morning. Your grandfather thought you should know." I nodded, processing this information. "I need to see Grandpa first, then head to the office." "He's actually at the office now," Brian replied. "Said he wanted everything ready for your return." 40 minutes later, we pulled into the underground parking garage of the Matthews Enterprises headquarters, a 12-story building in downtown Chicago that my grandfather had commissioned 20 years ago. The security guard at the entrance, who had known me since I was a teenager, offered a warm welcome and congratulations. The executive floor was unusually quiet when we arrived. My grandfather's assistant Angela met us at the elevator, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and relief. "Ms. Matthews, I mean, Ms. Jessica," she corrected herself, still adjusting to the new hierarchy. "Your grandfather is waiting in the boardroom with Mr. Washburn." James Washburn was our chief legal counsel, a sharp-minded attorney who had been with the company for over a decade. His presence suggested this meeting would address the legal ramifications of Diana's actions. Before entering, I took a moment to collect myself. Through the glass walls, I could see my grandfather sitting at the head of the table, looking smaller somehow than when I'd left just days ago. The weight of his daughter's betrayal had taken a visible toll. "Jessica," he said warmly as I entered, standing to embrace me. "Welcome home." "Thank you, Grandpa," I replied, hugging him tightly before taking a seat beside him. James nodded formally. "Congratulations on both the partnership and your appointment, Jessica. Impressive work under extraordinary circumstances." "Thank you, James. Though I wish the circumstances had been different." I turned to my grandfather. "Brian mentioned Diana's meeting with Gerald tomorrow." He nodded grimly. "She's not giving up. That's why I asked James to walk us through our options." For the next hour, James outlined the legal situation. Diana had signed a binding agreement relinquishing her position and shares, but she was now claiming she'd signed under duress. While her case was weak, fighting it would be messy and public, potentially damaging the company's reputation and our new partnership with Tanaka Industries. "What about the criminal aspect?" I asked. "The fraud and embezzlement?" James exchanged a glance with my grandfather before answering. "We have more than enough evidence to pursue criminal charges. But your grandfather has reservations." I turned to Robert questioningly. He sighed heavily. "She's still my daughter, Jessica. Despite everything. The thought of her facing criminal prosecution, possibly prison time. He shook his head. I'm not sure I can do that to her, no matter what she's done. I understood his conflict. Despite her actions, Diana was still family. The Matthews name would be dragged through a very public scandal if we pursued charges. Yet the magnitude of her betrayal demanded consequences. What if we offer one final settlement? I suggested after careful consideration. A clean break. She signs an enhanced non-disclosure agreement, agrees never to contact anyone associated with the company again, and in exchange, we don't press charges. James nodded thoughtfully. That could work, but what would motivate her to accept? She's already lost her position and shares. A financial settlement, my grandfather said quietly. From my personal accounts, not the company's. Enough for her to start over somewhere else, far from here. The proposal pained him visibly, but I recognized the wisdom in it. A clean separation would allow the company to move forward without the distraction of protracted legal battles, while still holding Diana accountable for her actions. I'll draw up the papers, James said, making notes. But given her current attitude, getting her to agree won't be easy. Leave that to me, I said with determination. I know exactly how to approach this. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, prepared for the confrontation that had been brewing for decades. Diana had always resented my close relationship with my grandfather and my place in the company. Today would bring that resentment to its inevitable conclusion. I was reviewing the final settlement documents when my phone rang. Gerald Foster calling to inform me that Diana had arrived for their meeting. She's making some disturbing accusations, Jessica, he said, his voice grave. I thought you should know before she speaks to other board members. Thank you, Gerald. Would you mind bringing her to the main boardroom? I believe it's time we addressed this situation directly, with all relevant parties present. 20 minutes later, Diana strode into the boardroom, Gerald following behind her. She faltered momentarily upon seeing me, my grandfather, and James already seated at the table. Well, she said, recovering quickly with a brittle smile. The welcoming committee. Take a seat, Diana, I said calmly, gesturing to a chair opposite us. I'm here to speak with Gerald, not participate in whatever ambush you've arranged, she replied coldly. Gerald cleared his throat. I think it's best if we all talk together, Diana. Clear the air. With visible reluctance, she sat down, her designer handbag placed precisely on the table before her like a shield. Congratulations on Tokyo, she said to me, voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm sure you're feeling very pleased with yourself. This isn't about Tokyo, I replied evenly. This is about what happens next. My grandfather spoke up, his voice steady despite the pain evident in his eyes. Diana, we're offering you one final opportunity to resolve this situation without legal consequences. James slid the settlement documents across the table. Diana didn't even glance at them. Legal consequences, she scoffed. For what? Trying to protect my inheritance from being stolen? This company was built by my father. It should be mine by right. Rights come with responsibilities, I said quietly. Something you've never understood. Her eyes flashed with anger. How dare you lecture me about responsibility? You've had everything handed to you while I've been sidelined my entire life. Handed to me? I repeated incredulously. I worked in the warehouse during summers in high school. I interned in every department during college. I earned my MBA while working 60-hour weeks. What exactly was handed to me, Mom? My father's approval, she snapped. His trust. His respect. Things I never got no matter what I did. My grandfather's voice broke slightly as he responded. Diana, I tried to include you from the beginning. You showed no interest in learning the business. You mocked my attempts to teach you. You treated the company as nothing but a source of income to fund your lifestyle. Because you made it clear I would never measure up, she shouted, composure finally cracking. Nothing I did was ever good enough. So yes, I took what I deserved. What should have been mine anyway? The raw emotion in her voice revealed the deep-seated resentment that had festered for decades. In that moment, I saw Diana not as the villain of the past few days, but as someone who had spent a lifetime feeling inadequate, comparing herself to her father's expectations and finding herself wanting. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me understand them. The past can't be changed, I said after a moment. But we can determine what happens next. These documents offer you a financial settlement in exchange for your complete separation from Matthews Enterprises. No criminal charges, no public scandal. A chance to start over. Diana finally looked down at the papers, flipping through them with practiced nonchalance that didn't quite mask her interest in the settlement figure. "And if I refuse?" she asked. James answered clinically. "Then we proceed with criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted theft. The evidence is comprehensive and conclusive. We estimate a sentence of 7 to 10 years based on similar cases." The color drained from Diana's face as the reality of her situation sank in. For all her bravado, she hadn't truly grasped the legal jeopardy she faced until this moment. Gerald, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "Diana, as your father's oldest friend, I urge you to accept this offer. It's more generous than many would extend under these circumstances." She looked around the table, perhaps searching for sympathy or a weakness to exploit. Finding none, her shoulders sagged slightly, the first genuine show of defeat I'd ever seen from her. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll sign your papers. But don't pretend this makes you the heroes of this story." As James guided her through the signing process, explaining each provision in detail, I exchanged a glance with my grandfather. The relief in his eyes was tempered by profound sadness. No matter how this ended, a fundamental family bond had been irreparably broken. When the final document was signed, Diana stood abruptly. "I suppose this is goodbye, then." "It doesn't have to be," my grandfather said softly. "Not forever. Perhaps with time." "Save it," she cut him off. "You've made your choice. You chose the company, and her, over me." Again. She gathered her belongings with deliberate precision. "Enjoy your corporate empire, Jessica. I hope it keeps you warm at night." With that parting shot, she walked out of the boardroom and out of our lives, leaving behind a silence heavy with finality. Gerald excused himself shortly after, expressing his support for my leadership and relief that the situation had been resolved without public scandal. James gathered the signed documents and left to file them appropriately, leaving my grandfather and me alone in the boardroom. "Did we do the right thing?" he asked quietly, staring at the door through which his daughter had departed. I reached over and took his hand. "We did the necessary thing. For the company and for the 300 people who depend on it for their livelihoods." He nodded slowly. "I keep trying to understand where I went wrong with her. Was I too strict? Not strict enough? Did I compare her to me too often?" "Grandpa," I said gently, "some people spend their whole lives blaming others for their own choices. Diana chose her path long ago. That's not on you." He squeezed my hand gratefully. "You always did have wisdom beyond your years." After a moment, he straightened in his chair, visibly pulling himself together. "Enough looking backward. We have a company to run and a new partnership to implement." I smiled, drawing strength from his resilience. "Yes, we do." Together, we walked out of the boardroom toward my new office, the CEO's office that had been his for over 40 years. Outside the door, he paused. "This company was built on integrity, innovation, and respect for people," he said, his voice regaining its characteristic steadiness. "I've never been more certain that it's in the right hands now." As I stepped into the spacious corner office with its panoramic views of Chicago, I felt the weight of responsibility settle firmly on my shoulders, not as a burden, but as a purpose. Against all odds and through unexpected betrayal, Matthews Enterprises had emerged stronger, with a promising international partnership and clear leadership. The path forward was bright, even if the journey here had been darker than I could have imagined. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The integration with Tanaka Industries progressed smoothly, their $4.2 million investment transforming our production capabilities and expanding our market reach across Asia. What had begun as a desperate move to save a struggling company had evolved into a genuine partnership that benefited both organizations beyond our initial projections. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood in our newly renovated research facility, watching as engineers from Chicago and Tokyo collaborated on prototypes for our next generation of building materials. The energy in the room was palpable, creative minds sharing knowledge across cultural and linguistic barriers, united by a common vision. "Impressive progress," said a familiar voice behind me. I turned to see my grandfather, looking healthier than he had in months. Since stepping back from daily operations, he had focused on his health, following his doctor's advice with the same discipline he'd once applied to business. "The Tanaka team has been incredible," I replied, walking with him through the laboratory. "Their materials science expertise combined with our market knowledge is creating something neither company could have achieved alone." He nodded appreciatively. "The best partnerships always do." After observing the work for a few minutes, he asked, "How are the numbers looking?" "Better than projected," I said, unable to keep the pride from my voice. Third quarter results show revenue up 28% year-over-year. The initial investment has already been recovered, and our market valuation has crossed $12 million. "And the team? How are they adjusting to all the changes?" This was the question that mattered most to both of us. Matthews Enterprises had always prided itself on being more than just a business. It was a community of people working toward shared goals. There were growing pains at first, I admitted. The reorganization was difficult, especially explaining Thomas's sudden departure. But the new security protocols have actually streamlined many processes, and the increased transparency has improved trust across departments. We continued our tour through the facility, stopping occasionally to chat with employees. The atmosphere throughout the building had transformed from the tense, uncertain environment of 6 months ago to one of innovation and optimism. Later, over lunch in my office, the conversation turned to more personal matters. "Have you heard anything?" I asked, not needing to specify about whom. My grandfather shook his head. "Nothing directly. Gerald ran into an old friend of hers who mentioned she's living in Arizona now. Apparently, she's opened some kind of boutique." I nodded, feeling the complex mix of emotions that always accompanied thoughts of my mother. The hurt and betrayal remained, but the raw anger had gradually subsided, replaced by a kind of sad acceptance. "Do you ever think about reaching out?" he asked carefully. I considered the question before answering truthfully. "Sometimes. But then I remember how calculated her betrayal was, not just of the company, but of you. She was willing to fake your medical emergency, Grandpa. To use your supposed life-threatening condition as a manipulation tool." I shook my head. "Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt." He nodded sadly. "I understand. I've made peace with it in my own way. Diana made her choices, as we all do. The company, and you, deserved better." After lunch, we reviewed the agenda for next week's board meeting. Despite his semi-retired status, my grandfather still attended every meeting, his experience and wisdom invaluable as we navigated our new global presence. "Hiroshi Tanaka will be joining us via video conference," I noted. He specifically mentioned wanting to discuss expansion opportunities in emerging markets. "Hiroshi doesn't waste time," my grandfather said with admiration. "That's why his company has thrived for 3 generations. Like ours," I said with a smile. "Even more so now." He glanced around the office, his office for so many years, now comfortably mine. "You know, when I started this company, I never imagined it becoming what it is today. International partnerships, cutting-edge technology, it's gone far beyond what I built." "Because of the foundation you created," I reminded him. "Everything we're achieving now is built on what you established." As he prepared to leave, he paused by the door. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you. That moment in Tokyo, when you discovered Diana's betrayal, how did you manage to stay focused on the negotiations?" Most people would have fallen apart or rushed home immediately. I considered this. I think I finally understood something you'd been trying to teach me for years. Business isn't just about strategy or numbers, it's about character. In that moment, I knew I had to embody the values this company was built on, even when, especially when, it was difficult. He smiled, a mixture of pride and wistfulness in his expression. That's what makes you a better leader than I ever was. I started to protest, but he raised his hand to stop me. It's true. I built this company on solid principles, but I failed to apply those same principles at home. I never found the balance between being a good businessman and being a good father. He sighed deeply. Perhaps if I had, things might have turned out differently with Diana. You can't blame yourself for her choices, I said, echoing what I'd told him months earlier. No, but I can acknowledge my part in shaping the environment where those choices were made. He straightened his shoulders. The past is written, but the future isn't. That's the beauty of life, we can always learn, always improve. After he left, I stood by the window overlooking the city, reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal that could have destroyed everything had instead become a catalyst for transformation, both for the company and for me personally. The painful experience had taught me invaluable lessons about trust, leadership, and resilience. I'd learned to trust my instincts when something felt wrong, even concerning those closest to me. I'd discovered my capacity to function under extreme pressure, maintaining a professional facade while my personal world imploded. Most importantly, I'd come to understand that leadership isn't tested during easy times, but during crises, when decisions must be made with incomplete information and high stakes. My phone buzzed with a message from Yumi Tanaka, who had become both a valued business partner and something of a mentor over the past months. Just reviewed the joint development proposal. Impressive work. My father says you remind him of himself at your age, high praise indeed. Looking forward to next week's discussion. I smiled, appreciating how this relationship had evolved from that tense first meeting in Tokyo. Sometimes, the most valuable connections arise from navigating difficult circumstances together. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across my office, I pulled out the small wooden maple leaf charm my grandfather had given me before the Tokyo trip. It had become something of a talisman, a reminder of where we'd come from and what we stood for. Trust, once broken, can never be fully restored to its original state. Like a shattered glass, it may be pieced back together, but the cracks remain visible, a permanent reminder of its fragility. My relationship with my mother had been irreparably damaged by her betrayal, a painful reality I had come to accept. Yet from those broken pieces, something new and stronger had emerged. Matthews Enterprises had transformed from a company fighting for survival to one poised for unprecedented growth. The painful experience had forged me into a more discerning, more decisive leader than I might otherwise have become. Perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest opportunities for growth arise from our most painful challenges. The business trip that could have ended in disaster had instead become the catalyst for renewal, a difficult but necessary evolution that had secured the company's future for generations to come. As I prepared for a video call with our Tokyo team, I thought about how differently things might have turned out had I not trusted my instincts in that critical moment. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the most important ones, choosing integrity over convenience, long-term vision over short-term gain, truth over comfortable illusions. In business as in life, character ultimately determines destiny. My grandfather had built Matthews Enterprises on that principle, and now it was my responsibility to carry it forward, wiser for the experience, stronger for the struggle, and more committed than ever to the values that had sustained us through crisis into opportunity. Have you ever faced a moment when you had to choose between family loyalty and doing what you knew was right? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of betrayal and business resilience resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might find strength in knowing that sometimes our greatest challenges lead to our most meaningful growth. Thank you for joining me on this difficult but ultimately triumphant chapter of my life, and I look forward to sharing more stories with you soon.